Things you didn't know about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Hey everyone, it's Alexa, back again with another video. Dwayne Johnson is more than a wrestler or an actor. He's a great guy with a great history, and we're here to give you a little insight into his amazing life. He's admirable in every way imaginable, and Hollywood doesn't typically see stars quite like him all the time. From some history on his family, his wrestling name, his personal struggles, and more, these are all the things you didn't know about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. But before we get into today's video, make sure that you are subscribed and ring the bell icon so that you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The family business. Now, we all know that The Rock was once a professional wrestler and eventually moved on to making movies. But did you know that wrestling is really in his DNA? His father, Rocky Johnson, was a professional wrestler as well, and so is his grandfather, Peter Maivia. This means that he's a third-generation professional wrestler and was the WWF's first ever third-generation competitor. His father, Mr. Rocky Johnson, became famous in 1983 when he became the first African-American to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. The Rock also has uncles and cousins who are wrestlers as well, so now you know. Dwayne Johnson was just destined to be a wrestler. His grandfather was a villain. Not a real villain in real life, but a Bond villain, which is actually pretty awesome. No wonder Dwayne decided to first become a wrestler and then move on to working in movies. His grandfather did it first. Peter Maivia was a successful professional wrestler, which could be where The Rock learned his moves. He was then cast as a villain in the Bond film You Only Live Twice, and Johnson has said that he wishes he could play a Bond villain as well. This is no doubt inspired by his talented grandfather, and we can now see where he gets the motivation to do the things he does. He's a Samoan dude. While a lot of people argue over Dwayne Johnson's race, some say he's African American and white, others think he's Spanish and African American, it's not as complicated as they make it sound. In fact, those who guess he's African American are correct. But he's also Samoan, and that seems to explain a lot. His mother is of Samoan descent, and his father is African American, and the two sure did make one good-looking baby. Mr. Johnson can thank his parents for his looks, and considering they brought him to this earth, he can thank them for his talents as well. Beginnings of a star. When Mr. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson started wrestling, he wasn't known as The Rock, as we all know him today. He began his career in wrestling as somebody named Flex Savannah, and that's a guy that we don't know. The name didn't take, though, thankfully for us, and he ended up going with something a little more personal. He combined two names to make a nickname, which also didn't stick, and then he finally landed on The Rock. But more on that in a second. Behind the name. Dwayne Johnson began his WWF career way back in 1996, and his stage name was initially a combination between the names of his father and grandfather. Rocky Maivia was welcomed to the world of professional wrestling, but luckily for us, not long after starting, he suffered a knee injury. This injury led to him having to take some time off and gave him plenty of time to think, and that is when he came up with a stage name change. In 1997, he returned to the WWF and is now calling himself The Rock, and he also had a new bad boy persona which helped to launch him into the limelight in the world of professional wrestling. Speaking of his name, while we're on the subject, we figured it was best to let you know that he owns the rights to his wrestling name. No, seriously, he owns The Rock, all of his catchphrases, and all of the logos that may be associated with the persona. He bought all of the rights on everything The Rock related, so he knows that nobody will be able to steal his alias. This means you'll have to get his permission if you ever want to name your business after the actor or after a large stone you found in a field. But it's no secret that he doesn't exactly like being called by his wrestling name, and in 2006 he actually told Entertainment Tonight, "I am no longer a wrestler. I am now pursuing a future as an actor and someday as a director. I am not The Rock, I am Dwayne Johnson." It sounds like the name got pretty old even to him. A record-breaking payout. For being a first-time actor, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson sure did get paid pretty well for his part in The Mummy Returns. In the 2001 movie, Johnson plays Matthias, aka the Scorpion King, and he did a pretty good job at it. This was at a time when he was unknown as an actor, though, and a lot of people had no idea who he was. That is, unless they watched him wrestling. That did not stop him from receiving a good paycheck for his part, though. He reportedly made $5.5 million for the movie that became the first stepping stone into his now long and very successful career. He was even inducted into Guinness World Records for the record, and that is how you know it's legit. Saturday Night Live. We all know that he's been on Saturday Night Live, and most of us probably know that he's been asked to host more than once. The thing about that is, he's the first ever athlete to be asked to come back and host more than once. His first appearance was in 2000, and it was then that people in Hollywood began noticing him, and it was also then that people got to see he had a funny side. Following his appearance, he started to get offers for movies, and the rest, as they say, is history. SNL helped his career immensely and pretty much presented a new opportunity and a new line of work to him. He also became famous for his character, The Rock Obama, which is obviously part Barack Obama and part Incredible Hulk. Without SNL, we may not have seen the Dwayne Johnson we know today. His catchphrase made the dictionary. The Rock became really popular, and in his prime, it seemed like everything that he said caught on or was picked up by the masses. Did you know that his word, Smackdown, became so popular that it made its way into Merriam-Webster's dictionary? That means that it is now an official and recognized word in the English language. Other things he said became popular back in the day as well, such as the millions, just bring it, and it doesn't matter. It seems like the guy can do anything and say anything, and it'll pick up with, well, almost everybody. He wins more than Charlie Sheen. The Rock is a boss when it comes to all things winning, and if you look back at his careers in wrestling or acting, you may just gain a bigger appreciation for him. In 2013, he was at the tip of the top and was one of the world's highest grossing actors, as his movies brought in roughly $1.3 billion across the globe. He even gets projects with big name actors and manages not to be outshined, or outshines even the big boys. He's also written a book that not only made the New York Times bestseller list, but made it to the #1 position and then stayed on the list for months. The book was The Rock Says, which was an autobiography that chronicled his struggles in the professional wrestling world and the history of his family and their experiences with wrestling. He's also highly decorated in the professional wrestling world and has so many titles and awards that it's hard to even count them all. He owns a production company. Mr. Johnson owns a company called $7 Production, and that company, his company, has produced some of the movies that he has starred in. Both Baywatch and Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle were produced by $7, and this information was actually new to us. He's so talented in almost every way, and we're excited to see what he decides to do next. He isn't always so happy. This one may surprise you, but did you realize that The Rock himself is actually a regular guy with normal people problems? He is scared of things, just like we are. He gets depressed, just like we do. He is a normal human being in a superhuman body. Want to hear some funny stuff, though? He's scared of a few amusing things, like miniature horses and itsy-bitsy little spiders. He's also afraid of roller coaster rides, and being as big as him fitting into those tight little seats, we probably would be too. He also suffers from depression fairly often, and he's needed help to get through it at times, much like us normies do. While playing college football, he was depressed when he got a shoulder injury, and that put him out for a time. He was also cut from the Calgary Stampede, a team in the Professional Canadian Football League, and yet again fell into a depression. He became severely depressed in 2008 while going through a divorce from his childhood sweetheart, and it was his father who helped pull him through that one. This just goes to show you that everything he does and has, he's still human too, and if he can stick around and push through things, then maybe we can too. All in the family. Even somebody as large and as intimidating as The Rock has to have a stunt double, which seems crazy enough on its own, but it's who his stunt double is that's even crazier. His cousin, Tanoai Reed, is lucky enough to make a living as the stunt double to his cousin, The Rock, and that's probably because not many other people look like or are as big as Dwayne Johnson. The two have done more than a dozen movies together, and there are even times that Reed gets asked for autographs because fans mistake him for his more famous family member. When they were younger, the two both played football and even did so using the same number, 74. The two have almost the same body type, which makes them the perfect duo, and they've worked together for more than 17 years. Alright, we've seen some pretty heartwarming and amazing things about Dwayne Johnson so far, and we still have one more awesome little tidbit to go. But first, we'd like to ask you, what is your favorite performance of his? Was it Rampage? Baywatch? The Fate of the Furious? His awesome wrestling acting? Let us know in the comments below. 1. He's a pretty smart guy. Dwayne didn't decide to go the route of a lot of athletes when he saw his star rising, and he stayed in school. He played college football for the University of Miami, and in 1991, while playing defensive tackle, he helped Miami win a championship. While doing so, he earned a bachelor's degree in criminology and has said that he would have enjoyed working for the FBI. Not only could we and everyone else see him working for the FBI, but now we all have to wonder why he hasn't started more movies and TV shows that cast him for that part. He's not just your run-of-the-mill jock and action star. He could, and probably would, go work some excellent intelligence-dependent jobs most of us couldn't get were he to decide to retire from the big screen.